Hey darlings. It was not hot at all on the shore of the sea. The waves were quietly rustling. The sun was hiding behind small clouds, then looking out again, mumbling to the carefree, resting, who arrived to swim in the sea. Two girlfriends, Dina and Sveta. In the summer of the late 80s, having received a diploma after graduation from the technical school, they came for a week to Sveta's aunt in a small village by the sea. Aunt lived alone, gave up part of the house to tourists, but also the niece and friend found a place to live. On the second day of vacation, the girls met two young people, Vasya and Igor. They also just graduated from school and were about to leave for the army. Both guys liked Dina, but she immediately chose Igor, a blue-eyed guy with a cute smile. Igor was also charmed by this cute girl. In addition, Dina had a very light and cheerful character. From morning till evening, for young people did not part, swam, sunbathed, played volleyball. Igor and Dina wanted to unite, but they were awkward with their friends, and they only occasionally, as if by accident, touched each other with their hands, every time quivering and freezing from excitement. 5 days passed like a light. The guys in the evening brought the girls to the gate and wanted to say goodbye and leave, but Egor looked into the eyes of Dina and saw that they were full of tears. He didn't say anything, just took her by the hand and pulled her with him. Vasya and Sveta watched them closely and quietly envied them. They did not wait for their friends that night. Egor and Dina went far along the night coast of the sea. There they hugged and sat on warm sand. They watched for a long time as soft foam waves rolled on them from the black unknown and kept silent. They were afraid to say something unnecessary, stupid, and did not dare to say the most important thing they talked about only once in their lives. Egor turned to the girl, saw how stars reflected in her eyes, and gently touched her lips. Dina trembled, clung to him. Her body trembled with a strange excitement that, like magic, turned off the feeling of time and space. The lovers slowly descended to the sand, like on a soft feather, and moved into the world of happy madness. The night flew by so quickly that young people were very surprised, seeing how the sky became lighter over the sea. Then they seemed to have woken up. Dina looked with despair into the eyes of Igor, and he whispered to her, "I will soon go to serve in the army, most likely to Afghanistan. I don't know if I'll come back from there. Therefore, I do not want to promise anything to you, and I do not want to take promises from you." Dina wanted to object something, but Igor stopped her. "No, don't say anything. Let's guess. Let's take this one." He took off the neck of the amulet on the rope in the form of two small sealed locks, recently bought from a merchant for souvenirs on the local market. He broke it in half and pulled Dina. "Hang on your neck and never take it off. If we are destined to meet, then our halves will definitely attract each other." The girl firmly clenched half of the amulet in her fist and whispered like a conspiracy, "They will definitely attract." Dina had a hard time returning to reality. When she got home, she immediately went to work. Not because she wanted to show what she was taught in the technical school, but she tried to forget, not to think about Igor. She didn't do it well, and soon she realized that she would have a child. No, she was happy that she would now have a part of Igor, and she didn't even think about leaving the child. When Vera Danilovna, Dina's mother, learned about the situation of her daughter, she grabbed her heart, fell on the couch and asked for a wet cold towel on her forehead. Dina with a smile fulfilled her request, and then sat next to her and firmly said, "Think about how good and loving he is born. After all, this is your grandson, mom, or granddaughter. This is my child, and his dad is a very good person. Only we need to wait." Dina smiled mysteriously. "They will definitely come, our halves." Mom looked closely at her daughter, threw something like, "Your upbringing," took off the towel from her forehead and got up from the sofa. "Grandson is grandson." Yekorka was born a bogatyr, a young grandfather, and Mikhail Petrovich's father Dina was only 42 years old at the time. took him in his arms like and, as usual, touched the amulet on her chest. Time passed. Little Igor grew up healthy and very smart child. At 5 years old, he already knew how to read and count to 100. Then he studied at school very well, won his sports sections, brought home medals from competitions. Dina and her parents loved Igor very much, a kind, responsive boy named after his father. Igor often asked his mother about his father, and Dina told him that his father is the best in the world and he will definitely find them. You just need to wait a little. She was driven away by the thought that Igor could have found her long ago because she once deliberately talked to him where she lives. Did he really forget everything or not come back? She had no opportunity to find out, but she still waited. She waited faithfully. Years went by, and Igor never appeared. Dina was tried to take care of. Different men, among which there were many worthy people. She tried to meet someone, hoping to fall in love and marry, but she failed. A small lock on the neck did not let her forget about Gora, and she could not take off the amulet. It was the most expensive thing in the world for her. If there was any problem, she clenched it in her hand and asked for help, and indeed, soon the right decision came to her head. Therefore, she was sure that he was magical and that Igor would still be found someday, and then he would always be near. The son grew up, married. Dina gave everything to him. She was happy with the gold medal received at the end of school, then a red diploma. But the happiest she felt when she first held the little granddaughter Masha in her hands. Now Igor lived separately, with his family. Dina often came to them, but still began to feel very lonely. Probably that's why she finally agreed to go on a date with very cute Stanislav Igorovic, her new boss. Stas had long been a widow. He had no children. He was a good, respected, and surprisingly soft and kind person. At first, Dina did not allow herself to get attached to him, but then she got used to it. He began to come to her house, got acquainted with Igor and his wife Alya, made friends with them, and in 6 months made Dina an offer. Mom, I know that you still love my dad, but he has never found himself. Maybe he's been married for a long time. He has a bunch of children, and you are all alone here. Egorka said quietly, hugging Dina after she told that Stas called her to marry her. Stanislav Igorovic loves you very much. I see. Let go of your past, go after him, so I will be calmer. Sorry, Mommy, but time flies. None of us get younger. Zina sadly smiled, listening to her son. She realized that he was right, that she needed to let go of her love, free herself from the burden of expectations, and try to become happy. Maybe Stas and does not burn in her soul such a fire as Igor. Maybe not throwing Zina in the shiver from his touch, but he is reliable and faithful, and this is worth a lot. The next day she gave her consent to Stas. He took her and whispered to her, "You will be happy. I will do everything for this." Dina smiled and raised her head, looking into his eyes. Stas looked at her as if not believing in his happiness, and then gently kissed his future wife. On the day of the wedding, Dina stood in front of the mirror, without breaking away, looking at her reflection. She was very beautiful in a tender blue suit, gorgeous hairstyle decorated with small rhinestones, from which her dark hair was overflowing in the light with small lights. She tried to feel joy in her soul, but looking at a small lock on her neck, she only thought that Igor had never seen her like this. Dina took a deep breath and decidedly took off her amulet. Dina came to the registration with her son. "You are the most beautiful bride." Then he turned to his friends and said, "I have the most beautiful bride." Everyone was happy. They laughed. They started to make compliments. Dina didn't hear anything. The bones were waving hands, bouquets, hair, and gorgeous women's dresses. The summer warm wind was blowing. But Dina didn't see it either. She could not take her eyes off the man in the wheelchair who was among the guests, who looked right at her, looked with despair, admiration, and immense love. He was in a light suit, both pants of which were turned over due to the absence of both legs, and a small lock on the same rope was dangling on his neck. The bride was beautiful, very beautiful. The gentle blue fabric gracefully covered her figure, and the hair strands shone in the sun, as if she were a heavenly queen. He did not think that someday he would meet her again, even though he believed, for some reason, his own words, that half of the amulet would someday attract each other. He knew that he and Dina would never be together, but still hoped to meet, at least to a random meeting. Egor looked at Dina with delight and could not take her eyes off her. Suddenly, remembering something, he looked eagerly at her neck, did not find what he was looking for, and his face darkened. So this is true. Egor really got into Afghanistan. After half a year of training, his and other guys were sent right there. For a whole year everything was fine, if you can put it that way. He was already relaxed, began to think about the house, about his parents, about Dina, which he did not forget for a minute. He remembered well how she, by the way, said where she lives, what she learned in the direction of organization, and there she will work. Igor, every day in a free minute, imagined how he suddenly appears in front of her with a huge bouquet of roses. He imagined the joy in her eyes, and most importantly, love. He was sure that she loved him, because he loved her very much. He and she did not believe that you can fall in love so much in just 5 days, or rather in one night, when he felt that she was his half, his wife, given to him by God. He did not regret that he did not leave her an address, because he understood that anything could happen to him, and he wanted her to be happy, even without him, and if everything goes well, he will find it himself. But for everything to go well, it didn't work out. For months before the game, he burst into a mine. Igor did not die. He did not even suffer from fragments, but his leg was lost. The surgeon who did the surgery in the hospital asked him for forgiveness for not being able to save his legs. He asked not to give up, to live, to love, but Igor could not. He gave up. For 2 years he sat in an invalid chair and looked out the window. His parents kept asking him to go outside, but he refused. He even forbade friends from going outside. He was afraid to see his daughter in their eyes. Mom saw that her son was slowly dying and decided to hire a new seat for him. She hoped that Igor would be interested in her and he would remember how wonderful life was. The seat was found quickly. For a good salary, Alisa agreed to take care of Igor, a masseuse. Alisa was 3 years older than Igor, and she had a 5-year-old son, Mishka, a sick and capricious boy. Alisa was never married, and few people paid attention to her because she had a very beautiful figure. But as a sitter, she turned out to be wonderful, attentive, and competent. In addition, she did a massage every day to Igor, from which the guy was pouring energy. He had a little fun, began to do gymnastics, and Alisa supported him morally and physically. They became friends. Igor, like that serious Alisa, could suddenly become cheerful and cheerful. He liked not to talk. Alisa was well-read and sharp-tongued. Then she began to sometimes bring her son with her. Misha was not an open child, but Igor gradually got used to him, and they even played board games. Alice persuaded Igor to go out. And one day he saw a girl in the park with a baby stroller, and next to her a young man on an invalid stroller. And they were happy. They looked at each other with such love that Igor, for the first time in 2 years, calmly remembered Dina. Maybe she would also accept him as such. After all, if you really love, then it's okay. Alessia, said Igor carefully, I have a request for you. For me it is very important, very. I do not want to ask my mother or father. They may misunderstand me. Yes, and first you need to find out something. I have loved one girl for a long time. We met even when I was healthy. Igor told Alessia about Dina and asked to go to her, talk to her, tell her about what happened to Igor, and see how she feels about it. Maybe she loves him so much that she wants to see him at least. At the end of the conversation, Egor's voice was trembling, and tears were in his eyes. Alisa silently listened to him, thought a little, and nodded. She promised to find out everything and talk to Dina. The next day, Alisa left. She was gone for 2 days. When she came to Egor, he realized that Alisa had returned with bad news. I found her, but I didn't say anything. I think you won't be offended by me for that. I just saw her with a solid man, clearly not a poor man. On the ring finger of her right hand, she had a ring on her wrist, and most importantly, she was pregnant. By the way, I heard their conversation. They discussed their move to the capital. Sorry if I upset you. Igor lowered his head and kept silent, and Alisa took him by the hand and gently squeezed her. Igor, she sat next to him. She betrayed you. You don't need it, but you really need me. Let's get married. I will move to you, and will always take care of you. I love you. Let me be not only a maid. I want to always be next to you. I will be a good wife, and your son will be a bear. Igor slowly looked up at her, kept silent for a long time, then gently finger-picked her cheek and smiled at her, pressing a small lock in her fist, hanging on a rope on his neck. I'm sorry, Alisa, but I can't. I love Dina very much and am happy that she is fine. Let me be alone. Let my dream of being with my beloved not come true. But I am now calm for her. She has everything in her hands, and I will live. I am very grateful to you for bringing me back to life. Now I will not give up. Since that day, Igor began to learn to be independent. He went out on his own. They lived on the first floor. He dressed himself, cooked himself food. Parents could not understand what happened to him and why Alisa quit, sharply changing his attitude towards Egor, but they were happy with this change in the son. Many years passed. Egor was engaged in translation. He was perfectly studying English and French. He had a lot of friends again, business friends. He was called from different countries. Women paid attention to him, and it did not bother him. He did not feel incomplete and did not look at others from below to above. He was completely equal. When Stas called him and his cousin and invited him to the wedding, Igor without hesitation agreed to come. He loved his brother very much, remembered his wife, and was sure that Stas had chosen a worthy woman for himself. One thing that worried him a little was that Stas lived in the same small town where Dina used to live. The stronger Egor wanted to get there, to see the places where Dina grew up, on the street she walked on. Egor came by car with his friend, right at the time of registration. With the joy of hugging his brother, Egor asked, "Where is the bride?" And Stas answered, "Women should be a little late." So they convinced themselves that we are more important, but we know the truth. Stas happily laughed and then rushed to the car. Igor, not having yet managed to laugh, felt that his heart was madly overwhelmed with excitement. He immediately recognized the beauty of his bride and realized that she also recognized him. Tina stood by the car for a minute, not moving from place. Then, without looking at anyone, she slowly approached Igor, took a brief breath several times, and only then could ask, "I'm a person with disabilities. Why didn't you tell me? You knew where I live. You thought I would give up on you?" Din's eyes were teary. She was shaking like she was in the cold. "I wanted to in 2 years." Igor replied with a pity. "But I was told that you were already married, and you were expecting a child. I couldn't break your life. Besides, I see you've already taken off your half of the amulet. I've never been married." "Egorka, your son," Dina proudly said and stretched Igor's left hand. He looked at her and saw the amulet on her wrist. "I have never parted with him, waiting for our meeting all my life." The guests whispered in anxiety, asking each other what was going on, and only Stas, who knew the story of the life of his cousin, understood everything. He slowly took off the tie. He unbuttoned his shirt and sat right on the porch of the "I have my own interesting life. Yes, you will know about everything. I will always be next to you." Dina slowly nodded and looked at Egorka, who was standing next to her car. Stas raised his head and saw Dina in front of him, sad, but smiling on her face. "You haven't changed your mind about marrying me yet?" she asked. "I am now free, completely. Don't leave me." And now the young can congratulate each other. Stas gently touched Dina's lips, and behind her, among the applauding guests, her adult son Igor stood, tightly holding his father's shoulder, who had been waiting for so many years with his mother. He managed to tell his father about his family, about the fact that he has a wonderful granddaughter, and to invite him to visit. Igor calmly smiled, and he did not dream of any more gift from fate. He tightly clenched two small locks in his hand like two souls met after long wandering in life. Igor was happy. Subscribe to the channel. I will be grateful for the like under the video. See you soon.